The body of Mangosuthu University of Technology electrical engineering lecturer, Chanell Shan Dwarika, the lecturer there, his body was found. The police are still searching for 2 more suspects. Dwarika was kidnapped by 3 unknown men while inspecting a property that he owns. The Higher Education and Training Minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has welcomed the swift response by law enforcement agencies. The minister will be visiting Dwarika's family today, and he joins us now for a quick reaction to what has happened at the Mangosuthu University of Technology. Minister, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with what the authorities have possibly told you about what the motive could have been for what occurred here.
Thanks very much, Xoli. Good morning to you and your viewers and listeners. Firstly, let me start by expressing once more my most sincere condolences to the family of Mr. Shan Dwarika for this very brutal and painful loss of their loved one, who was a lecturer at Mangosuthu University of Technology. The main reason why I'm visiting this afternoon, Xoli, is because I just want to go and get information from the family directly, after which then, of course, I will be linking up with my colleague, Minister Blade, just to get more details as to the progress that is being made in this regard. Of course, as you say, I really do welcome that 2 suspects have been nabbed, and the police also are following on 2 other suspects that they believe are closely associated with this brutal murder. So I'm sure that by the time I visit the family, then I will be having a bit more details in terms of following up on the side of safety and security matters, and also with my colleague, Minister Blade.
Indeed, as you talk about safety and security, this conversation, or should we say this incident, takes us back to those plans of how to protect the institutions of higher learning, and in particular against gangs, whom you have said previously, clearly these institutions are being targeted, and in some instances they're being targeted, or staff who work at these institutions are being targeted for financial gain.
Yes, definitely. You know, since we last spoke, Xoli, and since I visited Fort Hare earlier this year, we have had 2 campus safety summits with all the security officers as well as executives that are responsible for security in both our TVET colleges and our universities. And out of these summits, we have come out with some concrete proposals and suggestions in the main, how to link with the police, because at the end of the day, it's the police who are actually responsible for the safety of everyone in the country, but also to share experiences on how campus security should be professionalized, should be able to handle all sorts of situations that may arise, whether it's demonstrations and so on, including working closely with the police to actually chase these gangs and other people who have entrepreneurs, clearly, who have also targeted our sector. Of course, but we are part of society. Like Mr. Dwarika was not accosted, murdered, or kidnapped in the institution. He was basically at home, as it says, you know, in one of his properties, looking into his car. Yeah. And then he was bundled into his car. So it's part of what we are doing, must be part of a wider campaign, you know, in South Africa to actually deal with the safety of all South Africans, you know. So part of what we are faced with as the sector is also part of wider society. Yeah. And in this instance, then, if I may say just a little bit more, Xoli, is that it's a big loss to the family, obviously, for the murder of Mr. Dwarika, but it's a loss for our sector. Look, he was actually lecturing in a field in electronic engineering, a field that is still a very scarce area on our side, was specialized in communications engineering, including radio and TV engineering, as well as electronic and digital communications. Very experienced, a 61-year-old who had also been awarded some very prestigious fellowships, to go and study as part of the exchange in India, as well as the partnership that we have also had with ESCOM historically, to actually expand his knowledge. And how do you replace a 61-year-old with such an experience overnight, That's why the students, in fact, also are very distressed about this, at the university. And on our side, one of the areas we are focusing on is actually training and empowering quality lecturers so that we are able to produce students who are really well trained in the areas in which they are studying.
Yeah, and how do you replace 20 years of experience? Because that's what we read is the number of years that he had been lecturing for. Minister...
26 years, actually.
26 to be exact. Minister,
to be exact.
It takes us back then, as you've mentioned it just in your response now, the issue of Forte. Does it surprise you? Does it surprise you the number of those who are now going through a trial there to have been directly connected to the institution? The number of employees, former employees, does that surprise you just how targeted that institution was of Forte?
I'm not surprised at all, Paul, because in dealing with these problems, which, as I have said before, unfortunately are fairly widespread, it's not only Forte, in a number of our universities and colleges, you usually have networks. Networks that are often organized around capturing the supply chain processes in our institutions and the key people around those supply chain processes. If they are targeting transport processes, they will have people inside the transport department in a university or a college, someone in finance. They also, in many instances, also target registrars who are actually the engines, the administrative engines of the institutions, so that they work together to be able to grab the institution in terms of the core of where the monies are going through. So I'm not surprised at all. In many instances, I'm very pleased that in the instance of Forte, there are a number of people, because it means possibly it's the whole network that has actually been found and targeted. What is also of concern, which is not a new thing, is the role of some of the former students in some of these instances. Whether we are talking about corruption in student accommodation or corruption around tenders on what universities or institutions must acquire, some of the former student leaders, are sometimes being nabbed as part of this. It doesn't mean it's all the students, it doesn't mean it's all the lecturers, but it is actually of concern because it means also student organizations themselves must pay particular attention, to their own leadership, their own ethics, and linkages with past leaderships must be based on supporting current leaders rather than links in terms of tenders and other acts of corruption that we are seeing.
Yeah. Minister, talking about supply chain issues, and I think your characterization of the entire illegal network, whether it be siphoning money through the supply chain processes you speak about, we can't not speak about the Unisa situation, the Vice-Chancellor and the property in which she apparently is going to be staying in, major upgrades where you can clearly tell that there is an inflation of prices just to put up a curtain rail going into thousands of rand. How would you characterize what is going on at Unisa? Is that clear corruption, or do you have another term for it?
Well, only unfortunately with regard to the Unisa report, I would rather not comment much on it at the moment because I'm allowing it to go through a process. For instance, I have gazetted the report. and also handed a copy to the Speaker of the National Assembly as I am required by the law. I have also given this report to the Council of the University to actually study it and be able to report back to me. Only after the 30-day period, and including also, by the way, receiving other comments from the public, because the reason why I've gazetted it is that also I will be receiving responses from other stakeholders and role players, both inside and outside Unisa, and then be able to consider that comprehensively and then be able to take action once I have actually done that. So I wouldn't like to preempt, by selecting and picking up on this and that. Clearly the report does point out to the fact that there are indeed serious problems at Unisa, which is why in the first instance I had appointed Professor Musia as an assessor to go deeper after I had earlier appointed a ministerial task team whose task was, by the way, that one, was to look at the Unisa business model as our single largest university that is based on distance education. And in the course of the work that they were looking at the operating, what would be the best operating and business model of Unisa, they then came across all these other allegations about corruption, which then led me to appoint Professor Musia as an assessor so that he can actually go deeper into these matters. So I will be responding in due course on this. I wouldn't like at all to actually preempt the situation by making comments, ahead of myself considering the report fully and comprehensively. So that time will come.
Yeah, but the concern here, Minister Nzimande, will be that the longer that this stays, the reputation of the institution is going to be at stake. And can I also add another institution here that's actually in the media for all the wrong reasons? Stellenbosch University, a convocation president there has since been forced to resign, and there is a call for the vice-chancellor to quit owing to allegations of nepotism. It goes to the heart of what we're talking about, that higher education institutions, whilst there are safety and security issues on the go, but governance matters are also a major challenge. The reputation, do you worry about the reputation of higher education institutions?
I am very concerned about the reputation of our higher education institutions, Xoli. That is why I take these actions that I normally take. Like, for instance, appointing assessors to investigate and in some instances placing institutions under administration for purposes of correction. The issue of governance in our institutions is of major concern to myself, such that one thing that I'm working on now is even to establish two things. One, a structure inside my department that's just going to look very closely at governance issues, because we don't have a structure that does that in a comprehensive, overarching way. You have one that deals with universities, one that deals with colleges, one that deals with CETAs. I want to have an overarching thing. Secondly, with regards to the universities, we are exploring with the department working towards the establishment of an ombuds, so that if there are complaints about these institutions, there must be a central body in the form of an ombuds who is actually able to respond and be able to move in quickly with some of these things. But also what we are doing on an ongoing basis is to ensure that when we appoint councils and other people, there is training, so that people do understand the responsibilities that they have. And I am concerned only about the fact that, like the Unisa report, I would like it to stay for long, because the longer you stay with this, it's a problem. But remember, at the same time, we're a constitutional state, we're a democracy. I can't just as a minister wake up and say, boom, this is what I'm going to do. I have to follow due process, because if you don't follow due process, I've lost cases where I had very strong case, not because of anything, but because of technical processes. Minister, you didn't apply your mind. Minister, you didn't give us. So we can't have our cake and eat it. We're a constitutional democracy, unfortunately, Xoli. People will be impatient. You as media will say, why are you taking long? But as a minister, I have to follow things according to the law. Even if myself, I feel a lot of impatience. Stellenbosch is an old problem in Stellenbosch, principally of transformation.
Yeah.
And I think that the events that are taking place are beginning to tend towards maybe the main body in Stellenbosch, of lecturers, students, council beginning to realize that Stellenbosch can't just remain as an island of apartheid. And I know that Professor de Villiers, the Vice-Chancellor, has been embarking on some important initiatives to try and change the institutions from what it was before to become a truly South African university.
But it must disappoint you, though, Minister. But it must disappoint you that he is accused of nepotism, bringing in a nephew of his wife's.
Well, I've been in touch with the situation in Stellenbosch. The council has set up a process to investigate that. So I'm waiting for that, and I have indicated to the university that as soon as that process is finished, I would like that report is also shared with me. Again, council has taken up the matter, so we will see. If at the end of the process, I'm not satisfied that the council is actually dealing with the matter in the manner that it would, I would take the action that I normally take to ask council to actually account for that, in terms of the law and the Higher Education Act. But at the moment, I am waiting, like everybody else, for council to actually conclude, because there is an investigation that is underway.
Dr. Blade Nzimande, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, let me thank you very much for your time.